Sentire Media.
Hello, you. You're listening to A History of Italy. The Italian Wars, Part 8. Il Moro back in Milan. For a bit. 1500 to 1508.
E così ritorno su, lascio I colli nelle valli, tra due salici piangenti, io ritrovo la speranza di un amore che ormai fu.
In the last episode, we left the situation in Milan, recently taken by the French King Louis XII, bubbling dangerously as 1499 bubbled over into 1500. The mood was not good. From the very start, there had been grumblings and episodes of violence between the French occupying troops and the local population. If there had been any hope of relief from the heavy taxes that had been imposed by the Duke of Milan, Ludovico il Moro, it was short-lived. Indeed, one of the events of the Troubles was a fire that had broken out after a small revolt near the tax office. The new French authorities, after Louis had gone off to France, had to enforce increasingly dramatic regulations. For example, no more than 3 people were allowed to meet in public. The pro-French nobles who had welcomed Louis now felt the need to hole up in their castles. The troops in the city started to consider the idea of leaving to camp outside and wait for reinforcements. The situation was ripe for a return of Ludovico Sforza, but he needed to get an army together and was not getting much satisfaction from Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. He did have a little bit more luck with the Swiss mercenaries, who were increasingly becoming a force to reckon with, also as an organized political entity. Indeed, by this time, the various areas in which the region of Switzerland was divided, the cantons, had united into what came to be known as the Old Confederation, and, although still nominally part of the Holy Roman Empire, had managed to gain greater autonomy therein. We won't go too far into the matter, but patiently wait for Patreon supporter Peter W. to come out with his podcast project, The History of Switzerland. For the moment, let us be content with knowing that Ludovico managed to patch together an army of Swiss, Burgundians and Germans, and on the 20th of January 1500 marched back into Italy. One figure which was central to Il Moro's attempt to take back the duchy was his brother Cardinal Ascanio Sforza. We've mentioned him quite a few times in different contexts. He was a pretty big player on the Italian scene. For example, he was one of the 3 potential popes in the 1492 election, which in the end saw him throwing his weight behind Rodrigo Borgia to oppose Giuliano della Rovere. Now, with the French army not even considering trying to fight off an invading army and keep control of a hostile city, it was Ascanio who entered Milan on the 2nd of February 1500, just a few days before his brother, Duke Ludovico Sforza, also entered the capital. He had fled just 5 months before. Unfortunately, this time round, he was there with a large mercenary army. If there's one thing you don't do with a mercenary army, it's leave it sitting around. They get very quickly bored and get up to no good. To avoid this, and perhaps to get a hold on some loot, Sforza thought it would be a good idea to take his army to go and bully one of the cities that had been all too enthusiastic about welcoming his enemy Louis XII, the city of Vigevano, southwest of Milan. The citizens of Vigevano were not too keen on the idea of undergoing a sack by the hairy mercenaries, and very humbly immediately sought terms with Ludovico. So his troops, robbed of the opportunity for a bit of plundering and looting, if those two are different things that is, was even less happy than when they started out. For the time being, however, Il Moro managed to quiet them down by handing out the cash that he had gotten as a payoff from Vigevano. After that, he did manage to find a way for his army to unleash their frustration by taking back the important border city of Novara, that is, the border between the Duchy of Milan and the lands of the Savoy. You will remember the city because it was where a siege took place in which Sforza had ousted Duke Louis of Orléans. You may also remember that it was the city where I was born, but as far as I know, they have no plaque for that yet. Having taken back his capital and now starting to reconquer the border areas of his duchy, it may have seemed to Ludovico that he had a chance at gaining and maintaining control of his duchy definitively. Unfortunately for him, that was as far as it went. Louis had prepared a new army and now descended on Novara. What's more, Venice was once again fully committed and meanwhile had taken Lodi and Piacenza to the southeast of Milan. Also, some 2,000 Swiss had already left Sforza's army and more were being recruited by the French. The French arrived outside the gates of Novara on the 8th of April, 1500. The clash at Novara in that year was not another siege, but a pitched battle. Although there were initial clashes between the Burgundians and French lines, nobody was really heavily invested in the whole thing. When the Italian forces supporting Sforza started to waver, their supposedly allied Swiss did not back them up, and Ludovico's whole army retreated to Novara in the most disorderly of fashion. Talk started up between the Swiss on either side and between the Burgundians and the French, and that marked the end of Il Moro's resistance. It was suggested to Sforza to try and disguise himself and get away, hiding among the Swiss. He was initially furious and indignant at the suggestion, but in the end his survival instinct won out over his pride and he accepted. Supposedly, the disguise was comically exaggerated and his big Sforza nose was easily recognizable. Il Moro, possibly by betrayal, was identified and captured. The Swiss reputation did not come out of the whole situation looking great, so they later felt obliged to execute one of the agitators of what was perceived as the betrayal of Novara, a certain Tutzman of the Uri canton. In any case, foreign mercenaries would be perceived with infamy in Italian culture, especially during the Risorgimento, the 19th century period of Italian unification. This tended to overlook the fact that it had been Italian powers hiring said mercenaries and that Italian mercenaries had been selling their services and switching sides for decades, if not centuries. When Cardinal Ascanio Sforza heard the news of his brother's capture, he sent his brother's children to Maximilian in Innsbruck and tried to leg it, but he too was captured. He would later use his powerful church connections to get released. Now the French took back all of the Duchy of Milan, and they were not happy about how readily Il Moro had been welcomed back. The violence against cities increased even further, and the authorities were forced to pay huge sums of reparation. Pavia, Parma, and Lodi had to cough up thousands, and Milan forced to pay a crippling sum even for such a rich city. The French nobles to whom the lands of rebel Italian nobles had been assigned were not that keen on holding on to them, so a whole market of land sales started up, which saw the French cashing in and the lands going back to the families of the original owners. All very similar to what had happened in Naples after the expedition of Charles VIII in 1495. We're going to stay visiting the years around 1500 for a few more episodes, but let's just take a little detour into the future to see Ludovico il Moro to the end of his story. He was taken first up to Lyon, then L'Île Saint-Georges in Berry. There, he wasn't actually in a dungeon, but confined to a manor where he was waited upon by two servants, free to roam the grounds and to correspond with the outside world. This was not enough for a man who had ruled over one of the richest and most powerful entities in Italy and perhaps Europe. He fell into depression. The French king, worried about his reputation if something happened to his illustrious guest, sent a doctor to check up on him. The diagnosis was that the prisoner needed some distraction, so a jester was sent for, but it didn't work. In 1503, Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, died. The cardinals couldn't really reach a decision on his successor, so they chose a really old and feeble transition pope, the Sienese Francesco Piccolomini. Incidentally, if you would like to hear how I almost got into a fight in Siena, you can listen to it on my Patreon feed. Piccolomini, who became Pope Pius III, did his job as a transition pope and died shortly after his election. Then it was time for one of the big names, Giuliano della Rovere, who became Pope Julius II. He was an arch-enemy of the Borgias. Shortly after his election, he got a letter from the ex-Duke of Milan, Ludovico il Moro, and tried to intervene with his buddy, King Louis, but again, to no avail. Finally, the Emperor Maximilian was badgered into trying it by il Moro, but just managed to get the Duke transferred to a nicer location in Loches. Ludovico, however, eventually succeeded in getting himself put into a bad prison, but not before receiving another blow. On the 28th of May, 1505, his brother, Cardinal Ascanio Sforza, died of the plague. It is after that Ludovico Sforza tried to escape, which only got him put into more stringent confinement. He spent the rest of his days writing melancholy graffiti on the wall and poems for his long-lost wife, Beatrice. On the 27th of May, 1508, Ludovico Sforza, ex-Duke of Milan, son of Francesco Sforza, died. He was finally free to go home, and he now lies in Santa Maria delle Grazie, next to Beatrice, and you can see their tombs if you go to admire Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. So, at the start of the 1500s, another piece of Italy, after Sardinia and Sicily, was under the direct rule of a foreign power. This time, however, the controlled territory was in the very heart of the peninsula and now presented an open door for other foreign powers. If you exclude a bit of toing and froing, the Duchy of Milan would stay under foreign domination for 3.5 centuries to come, until a little thing called Italy finally came into being. Grazie mille. Thank you very much for listening. Stay tuned for the sketch after the credits. A History of Italy podcast is a Sentire Media production, created and hosted by me, Mike Corradi, and produced by my wonderful Patreon supporters, whom I would like to thank, starting from the third part of the Margherita Hack and Galileo Galilei level, and they are Neville, Niels, Paradise, Patrizia K, Peter F, Rachel, Rocco B, Roberta D, Rod L, Rodney N, Rudy F, Russell F, Sandra P, Scott L, Sean M, Shelby, Shelley, Steve S, Stephen, and Tap Dance Down Under, and of course, we cannot forget the tippy top Maria Montessori and Dante Alighieri level, Lisa K, Andrew M, Peter W, David L, David C, JW Sen, David A, Karen D, Helenka, Kaiser Bosch, Brigid, Dallas, and Joseph V. Thank you, one and all. If, like them, you'd like to have access to extra content and ad-free episodes, you can do so by going to ahistoryofitaly.com, clicking through to the support page, and becoming a Patreon supporter. Otherwise, you can donate on PayPal, or if you want to help out, just leave a rating and a review. That will also be great. Thank you very much, whatever you decide to do. You can also just get in touch, and I'll be happy to hear from you. Hello at historyofitaly.com, or on our contacts page at the website, you can click through to our social media. Thanks again very much for listening, and until next time, arrivederci.
Good morning, Lord Sforza.
Servant person, what is so good about it? My soul is engulfed in a dark chasm.
Good to see you cheerful.
Cheerful? I have no memory of that word. I've written a poem about how I feel.
Oh, not again.
I am sad, and that is bad. I am not glad, no, 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 I'm sad, and also just a little bit mad. That lovely duchy that I had is gone, and I feel...
Sad, perhaps?
You've been reading my private writings?
No, my lord, just a lucky guess.
Ah, well, I suppose we can't all be poets. After all, my poetic genius is all I have left.
Sure. If that will be all, sir, I will...
I have another poem.
Of course you do.
It's about my beloved Beatrice.
Well, that's a change from the other 147 you've written about her.
Listen. Oh, oh, Beatrix. You see what I did there? It's called poetic license.
Really?
Yes. All great poets use it. Oh, oh, Beatrix, only you can fix my achy, breaky heart, just like our favourite music mix and a tasty jam tart.
Are preserve-based desserts pertinent to heartbreak, then?
Poetic license, servant person. Hush now, there's more.
Oh, my ears.
Oh, oh, Beatrix, only you can fix my achy, breaky heart, just like our favourite music mix and a tasty jam tart. We used to play pick-up sticks, but now we are apart. What do you think?
Well, it's different.
Of course, there is no other poet like me, and now the roaring fire that is my genius flickers like a weak candle. I feel it is time to die.
Is that going to be before or after lunch?
Will they bury me next to Dante, do you think? He was almost as good as me.
It's just that if it was going to be before lunch, I could avoid getting...
Wait!
What now?
Inspiration has hit me.
That's not all that's gonna...
I die.
All right, then, if you could hurry up.
I die. You will cry. Oh, why do I not die? You will try to make me not die.
Well, actually...
But I will die, and you will cry.
Oh my, he did die. I accidentally shot himself with my crossbow in the eye. Well, what do you know? I'm a pretty good poet myself. I'll go and write that down.